I'm delighted to introduce Diana Kerr to us for coming along, and thank you very much for coming to this presentation. I had the absolute joy speaking with Diana a few weeks back and just finding a bit more about her and about the presentation. I promise there's going to be no spoilers. But one thing that came really clear is throughout your whole of your career, you just had such an amazing journey to get from where you started, which was as a social worker. And working as a social worker with people with dementia and with learning disabilities. It became very clear when she first began that there was a massive gap in this field, and I believe it was a programme, Alan Jakes?
Yeah, does anybody know Alan Jakes? No, amazing man, yeah.
Yeah, and she watched a programme called The Silent Epidemic. And this was in the 80s, and it was already started to notice that there was not really a lot of information around the work of dementia. And this inspired Diana's work, and throughout her career she's done some incredible things. And she's been a researcher, a practitioner, an educator, and an advisor. And she's also been the course director for the MSc in Dementia Studies at the University of Stirling, and also a research fellow at the University of Edinburgh. And not only this is what I mean by your journey has just been incredible. 17 years ago, she started up some groups. And within these groups, they're focusing on singing and singing with people with dementia, which is inspired by the talk for tonight. And by the time we got through the pandemic, there are 20 groups of these singing groups across Scotland, and there was even some in Calcutta as well. And to encourage more people to start up these groups, because Diana sees the power of these groups with the people that she works with. She's actually written a book as well, and it's available for sale here tonight for £5, and we're going to be selling these out in the foyer after our session. And the reason why we're selling these books here tonight is we're trying to inspire more groups to start up across Scotland again, and I highly recommend it. It's a really good read. So without further ado, I would love to give a warm round of applause to Diana, and again, thanks very much for coming along, and yes, enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
I feel like she's my agent for the books, you know. Well done. Right, the first thing I need to say is that actually I can bore for Scotland on this topic, and I've got 40 minutes, so I've had to be quite selective. And also what I have realised since I've been here, which actually Howie didn't tell me when he asked me, is that there is already a brilliant group here for people living with dementia and their carers. And I was, just before I came here, actually doing some singing, but there's a number of you here already. So there's clearly a big surge of singing going on, certainly in Kirkwall and amongst all of you. However, the important thing is, yes, we all sing. One of the questions that I get asked more than any other, actually that's not true, one of the questions I get very often asked is, why is music so good for people with living with dementia? The quick answer to that is, it's good for all of us. Music is something that is very deeply embedded in all of us. The baby, before it is born, has heard a beat. It's heard a heartbeat. And you know, mothers pick their babies up and they go, ah, ah. And what they're doing is they're almost imitating that heartbeat and the sound through the amniotic fluid. And you hope that's going to put the baby to sleep, actually. Of course, it doesn't always work. But the baby, we are born with a brain that is pretty blank, but very, very quickly stuff is going into it. But one of the things that's in it before we are born is a rhythm. The basic thing about music is in our brains before anything else. And that is so significant when I'm talking in a minute about what happens when people develop dementia. Our bodies are actually geared to respond to music. We are hardwired to respond to music. There's not a culture in the world, either now or historically, that hasn't had music. We all respond. There's a big question, you know, which comes first? Is it language or is it music? And I have to say that having listened to my grandkids recently, they seem to sing before they say anything. They have that sound. So it's very deeply embedded in us. Our bodies, and this is so important because I'm going to talk about people who are cognitively impaired. Our bodies respond to the music. So if any of you are in a gym, I haven't been in a gym for a while, but when I used to go, and you're doing something on the machines, and the music changes, and you change. You don't go, oh my God, that's gone from 3/4 to 4/4. Actually, your body just responds to the music. And that is very, very critical when we're thinking about people who actually are cognitively impaired. So I've got these things a bit loose. I think if these things fall off, somebody get them for me. So our bodies then are geared to respond to a rhythm, to music, whether we have dementia or not. So people, hang on, I've forgotten that. You don't have to have dementia to have a short-term memory problem. I'd already forgotten. Right. So we all respond to music. A baby responds to music as soon as it's born pretty well, or to rhythm, and so people with dementia will as well. So music and words stay when other skills have gone. So really, really importantly, that the nature of dementia is that it's an experience of increasing losses. It's an experience of losing function, of losing skills, of losing abilities. But the one thing that we don't lose is our ability to respond to music. So when I think about all the things I've done in my career, whatever, all the things I've introduced, very good things with people with dementia, like reminiscence work or whatever, the most powerful thing has been the music. This is, I've put this up because I can stand here and say this, but Oliver Sacks says it as well, so it must be true. Musical perception, sensibility, emotion, musical memory can survive long after other forms of memory have disappeared. Has anybody read Musicophilia? Yeah, brilliant, eh? I'd really recommend it. It's a wonderful book. I mean, what he writes is wonderful anyway. But what he's saying is that the music, when everything else has gone, the music stays. And if you think about it, if that music was in there, in our brain, from the very beginning, then it's not a surprise that it's still staying there at the end. So what we need to do, since the experience of dementia is one of loss, people with dementia become distressed, become agitated, they quickly feel lost, they feel useless. I can't do what I used to do, I can't say what I used to say. What we need to do is to play to their strengths. Don't try and get people to do things that's going to agitate them or stress them or whatever. Get them to play to their strengths. And our one strength, because it stays there till the very end, is music. So music, if you're with people with dementia and you're not, I always say, if you're not doing music, then you're not doing what it is that people really desperately need, especially even at end stage. So I've had people, I had a lady who had, a lady I worked with who had Down syndrome. That was my main area of work. And she had loved the ballet Cinderella. And one of her things all her life was that she would be Cinderella and her Prince Charming would come, and she would always tell these stories. And even at very end stage, when she was lying in a fetal position, when we played the music from Cinderella, she put her hand out like that to be kissed. The music somehow, she didn't respond to any talking, she didn't respond to anything, but she responded to the music. She still was Cinderella, even at the very end. So, let's think about some of the things that happen when we get dementia and why we need the music. Some of the very early, first, just in passing, there are many, 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 many dementias. This isn't the place to talk about them. The most common dementia, as you know, is Alzheimer's disease. So some dementias present differently, but I'm talking about the general flow of them. The things that you first notice, the things that first go, is when the part of the brain, the hippocampus, gets damaged. And that's the part of our brain that has our memory, our short-term memory, our memory for words, for numbers. So the very early things you will see is people not being able to find the word for something. So that foot thing, because they can't find the word shoe. Or you know the thing with the wheels? Or people will walk into the kitchen and they're like, oh, I can see your faces. Right? There's a large number of you going, oh my God, I do that. Right, and this next bit that I'm going to say is the most important thing any of us can learn about supporting people living with dementia. And certainly, when I go to providers of services as well as carers or whatever, I say to them, this will only take me about 5 minutes. And if this was put in place, if this was what was in all our brains when we're with people living with dementia, then their world would improve dramatically. And I just have to tell you a story. Hang on. The story is, which actually, I have many stories, but this one only happened recently. Well, not too recently, because you can see I really do need to go to the hairdresser. But actually, the last time I went to the hairdresser, the hairdresser got held up, and we were running late, and I'd agreed to meet somebody else. Somebody else had said they needed to see me, but they could only see me at a particular time. So I was under pressure from this person. The hairdresser was delaying, and she kept talking, and she's lovely, but I would say, just get on and do my hair, because I've got to get out, She finishes my hair eventually, and I'm really quite stressed, and I go up with my plastic card to pay, and it didn't take the contact list, so I had to put it in. And I'm thinking, oh, goodness, hurry up, for goodness sake. And she's saying, would you like, they try and say, would you like some of that? No, I don't want anything. I just want to get out of here. And I put in the number, and it's wrong. So, and she kept talking. I said, stop talking to me. And I did it. Anyway, if you do it 3 times, you lose your card. So I've done it 3 times, and I've lost my card. Oh, and I was just so angry. I thought, why don't people leave me alone? Let me get on with it. Anyway, fortunately, I know the hairdressers, and I think they looked at me and thought, poor old dear, she'll be all right. And they said, don't worry, go home and phone us with another card, and that'll be all right. Oh, I said, thank you very much. Thank you. So I sort of, right, that's okay. Although I'm really annoyed with my card provider, because they've obviously forgotten my number, because I know what it is. And I go to the door, and I'm, right, calm down. 1575. That was the number. I've changed my card, so it doesn't matter that you'll know. So I suddenly remember the number. Now, you've all had that experience, haven't you, where you can't think of something, and the harder you think, the more stressed you get, the harder it is to get hold of that, whatever it is you're thinking about. And when you relax, it comes. The part of my brain, and your brain, that has my short-term memory in it, and my memory for numbers, is intact, actually. It's okay, it's functioning okay. But just that little bit of stress, well, it felt big at the time, but when I tell you it doesn't sound much, I can see that. But the stress I was feeling was enough to make me blame the hairdresser, blame the person I was going to meet, blame my card provider, get confused, forget a number I'd only used the day before. And if that can happen to me and to you, and that part of my brain is perfectly intact, then for someone with dementia, where that part of the brain is actually damaged, then by giving them any stress at all, you're making sure they do what I did, which is blame other people, get angry, get confused, forget things. So the worst thing we can do, and this is dead easy to stand here and say this, I know. If you're a carer, it feels like of course you don't want to stress people, it's hard not to. So the central thing is not to stress people. So when we're supporting people with dementia, the core thing is don't stress them. And of course, one of the great de-stressors is music. We've all used music to calm ourselves down. But one of the things actually we know is that if somebody is very stressed, what we should do, what the research shows, is we should actually put on music that's quite maybe a bit agitating or whatever, and then slowly change the music so that they come down with the music. In fact, you can imagine that. If you're feeling agitated and somebody puts on which I think is beautiful, say the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, you go, turn that off. You know, that's not, I don't want to listen to that. But if you put on music which is actually quite, you know, going for it, and then you start to take it down, and that will calm the person, they will calm with the music. So really important then to use the music to calm the person. Now, so music, therefore, just as I was saying, the central thing with people with dementia is not to stress them. Music is the best tool for not stressing and reducing stress. The other thing, when we're thinking about music, when we think about what music to use and when to use it and how to use it, is, right, I'm going to ask you questions and you're going to have to answer them. Where are you now? Come on. It's not a trick. In the theatre, in Kirkwall. And what are you doing here? Right, good. Right. So, is there anybody here who thinks they're not in the theatre in Kirkwall listening to me talking about music and dementia? Right, so if I said actually that is absolutely not where you are and that's absolutely not what you're doing, who would you be worried about? Would you? Right. The only way you could answer those questions was by using your senses and using your short-term memory. So, first of all, you could all remember coming here. You remembered why you were coming. You've remembered, I hope, what I've been saying so far. You look round and you think, I'm in a theatre, I must be here to, you know, listen to somebody or whatever, and I'm standing on the stage. But the only way you can do that is by using your brain. Everything goes in and you make sense of it. One of the ways to think about our memory in our brain is to think of it, if you like, as like a shelf with a diary for every year of your life. So at the minute the baby's born, it's filling in a diary. You might not remember that, but you've been filling in this diary. And you are at the moment filling in your 2024 diary. Right? As the plaques and tangles, particularly about Alzheimer's disease, take hold of the brain and start to progress, they are killing off parts of the brain. And as they are killing that off, they first of all take away your short-term memory. So they take away this 2024 diary, and then you're 23 and you're 22, and the diaries start to fall down. As the dementia progresses, these diaries will fall down. So if your diaries have fallen down, these diaries don't there, but you've got to these diaries here. Say this is 30 years ago or something, 40 years ago, it could be much longer than that. And I ask you the same question, where are you? What are you doing? You can't make sense of them in this diary because it's not there, but you will make sense of them in this diary. This is where your reality is, because that's our brain that tells us where it is. So that is where you will feel your reality is. So, what are you doing sitting here? First of all, you may well, and this is a very common experience for people with dementia, feel very agitated. What am I doing here? You know, who are these people? Right? How did I get here? This doesn't make sense, because actually 30, 40 years ago, I wouldn't have been, you wouldn't be sitting here. Or maybe you think you've come for a pantomime. I'm sorry, I'm not going to entertain you, but you know, you might think that's why you're here. You might be waiting for somebody to come on. You might be waiting for a political, I don't know. Or each one of you will have a different thought about where you might have been 30, 40 years ago, sitting in a theatre. The problem for the person with dementia is they can't say, but this was 30, 40 years ago. This is their reality. And the problem is, for the person that's with them, is do you know where it is they think they are? So what we have to do, I'll just show you the, right. So this would be an example. So you can see in this with the diaries that are, the man has got all his diaries, and then as the dementia starts to progress, the diaries start to fall down. And that means that they're losing their present reality. A phrase that we often use about working or supporting people with dementia is we're working with different realities. That person's reality down at the bottom here is going to be very, very different. They're 10. So who are these other people that are with me? What am I doing with all these people? That's where their reality is. But it's also where their music is. So when we're choosing music, the sort of music that we want to play or want to enjoy with people with dementia, that's why they want music from the past. They don't want music from now, because if you've gone back in, although I have to say, if I got dementia in 20 years' time and somebody played me I wouldn't know a Swiftie tune from anything else. Do you know? I mean, I know Taylor Swift was in Edinburgh for 3 nights, and I still couldn't sing you a Taylor Swift song. Maybe some of you can. But you have to, just because it's 20 years ago doesn't mean it would necessarily be my taste or whatever. But that's why people are going back with the music. So when we're thinking about the music that we want to play to people or they want to listen to, it'll be music back in their diaries. And that will be highly varied depending on where they are, what culture they came from, what sort of music they were allowed or not allowed to listen to. And that's when you're providing, those of you who are providing music for people with dementia will know that there can be quite a variety in the things. So some people will really respond to something, and other people, it just doesn't click with them at all. So we have to sort of try and think, well, how can we get the music that suits most people if we're doing it in a group? Right, does that make sense? Is that, and that's a very important thing to hang on to. Also, of course, this isn't what I meant to be talking about now, but when we're communicating with someone with dementia, what is so important is that's where they are. Right? That's not where we are. And what we need to do when we're talking, if you're running, doing music, is to stay where they are. They may well be talking about things that are in the past. The worst thing we can do is to say, actually, you're wrong. This is now 2024 and you're 88 years old or something, because that person cannot be 88 years old any more than I can be 10 years old. So what we have to do always is find out ways of communicating with the person that goes with their flow or whatever, continues the conversation with them as if they were 10 years old. I was with a lady the other day, and she's in her 80s, and she said, she said, I can't stay here. She said, I've got to go back to my father. He's such a, I've got all these things I have to do for him, and he's such a worry. And clearly, she had looked after her father 20, 30 years ago. And I have to say, I said, sorry, guys, but I said, that's the trouble with men, isn't it? They worry you. And she went, yeah. And then we had a conversation because I stuck with where she was. What you don't go is say, obviously you don't say your father's dead, or you don't have to, and you never tell somebody they don't have to worry, because nobody can tell you that. Right, so if we go on and talk about some research findings in relation to music. There's masses of research. In the 1989, 1990s, there was stuff coming out. It's good it's hit the zeitgeist. It's on YouTube now, things about people with dementia, but the research has been around for a long, long time. It's taken a while to get going. Masses of research about music. We know that, for example, if you sing to people when you're doing intimate tasks, when you're bathing people, for example, or showering them, you will dramatically reduce the amount of aggressive or challenging behaviour, and and it works. I mean, I've seen it. The research was repeated 3 or 4 times, or whatever. Calming music. Obviously, if we put on calming music, it'll be lovely and calming. What the research shows, though, is that you should only put it on for 20 minutes and then turn it off. I've been into some homes, just some, where they had heard about using music, actually once from me, and I'd forgotten to tell them the next bit of this, which is, so the music would be on all day. They would put the music on and it would go around. And I went to one place and the staff said, did you tell our manager to put calming music on? I went, yeah, all the time. And oh God, I forgot the second bit. And the second bit is, which I'm telling you, because I never forget it now, is 20 minutes. What the research shows very clearly is if you have 20 minutes of the music and you measure people's calmness and reducing agitation, that's the optimum amount. Then you have a break and put it on again. If you put it on all the time, it just becomes another form of music and noise and whatever. So very important. I'm always at great pains now to say that. It reduces walking about or wandering. Obviously, a lot of the walking about we're seeing people with dementia because they're agitated and whatever, so music can calm that. Repeated vocalizations, you'll know that, they constantly know what time is it, what time is it, what time is it. Because these things aren't a surprise. If you reduce, going back to the beginning, if you reduce the stress, most of these things are about reducing stress. But of course, people with dementia are prone to be stressed because they're not sure where they are, what they're doing, who you are, what you're saying. If you're talking, if I was talking now, if you all had dementia, you'd probably have left actually, or you'd told me to shut up. Because how could you follow all the things that I'm saying? And I'm jumping from thing to thing. I'm not going coherently either. When I think of something, I put it in. So very, very important that we constantly try and reduce the stress, everything to reduce the stress. Very important, the first one, people with dementia, particularly in the early stages, tend to lose weight. Well, actually after that as well. And we used to think it was something to do with Alzheimer's and the condition or whatever. And of course, it's because they're not eating. This isn't the place for me to go into a whole thing about why people with dementia have difficulties with eating. There's piece of Scandinavian research, which has been repeated a number of times, which show that if you play music, if you play the right music while people are eating, they will eat more. How good is that? It's like, is it really that simple? If we played the right music, would she eat more? Yes. You can see it happen. You've got to get the right music. It's got to be the music for that person. We also know, of course, it alleviates pain. I did a big research study actually on pain in people with Down syndrome who had dementia, and it was really dramatic. The music isn't going to take the pain away, but it actually, again, you know that if you're in pain, you tense up, it's worse. So if you can try and relax and not stress, it can reduce the pain. It obviously increases people's what we call reality orientation. If people are not stressed, well, like me with my card, if you're not stressed, then you're more likely to remember what day it is, what you're meant to be doing. And it improves people's engagement, participation. Well, the singing I was just in was a brilliant example of that. Everybody singing together and then turning and talking to other people. Just in passing, a lot of you will have heard of Sally Magnuson's work with iPads, which her Playlist for Life, which is where you use music. Each person, you would make up a playlist. So for some of you probably done that, have you? You make up a playlist for somebody, and then they can listen to that music, and that will be very calming. And it works really well when it works. It's like everything. Do you know, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything about working with people, let alone people with dementia, that is just black and white and straightforward. The Playlist for Life work really, really well when they work. You make up a playlist of things that people respond to and want to listen to, and they will relax. It's very personal to them. However, one of the negatives is, and I have seen this, which is there's a temptation sometimes to sort of plug people in. So you give them their playlist, and then nobody's there. Given that people with dementia feel abandoned so quickly and alone so quickly, we have to be really careful about simply plugging them in and then going off and saying, well, you've got your music. One thing is to sit with somebody and have I have one and the other person has one, and listen to the music together. Also, the other thing is, and I'm sure, some days I do play the clarinet, so I love listening to clarinet music. Some days that's all my playlist would probably be all clarinet music. And another day, it could be the Eagles. In fact, if I'm in the car, it is the Eagles. That's one of my favourite things to listen to. It's really upbeat and gets you going. So we have to be very careful. There can be this assumption, because someone has dementia, that they're one-dimensional. You know, we all have preferences and we all change what we want from day to day. So there's you have to be a bit cautious with that, but it can be a way of getting music to people. Right. If listening to music is good, which I've just said it is, singing is even better. Singing gets your good hormones going, your endorphins and whatever. And oxytocin. So singing is even better for someone with dementia than listening to the music. Singing in a group is even better again, because when you sing in a group, you're actually having to communicate with other people. That sense of abandonment, that feeling that nobody's talking to me, nobody's with me, will go. And of course, there's a thing about singing together, is you really are singing in harmony. You're singing, you're on the same wavelength. People with dementia don't feel on the same wavelength as us because of the diaries. But when you're singing on the same wavelength. And it doesn't matter whether you're singing the same words or not. In fact, I just, how long have I got? Oh, I'm all right, good. I'm going to tell you a very quick story. You mentioned Calcutta. I work in India sometimes, and they had bought the book. And they had decided, some people in Calcutta, to set up a singing group like the one we had here. And I went, and they said Rabindranath Tagore was a great Ecosophile, and he translated Burns into Bengali. And when I went, so it was people with dementia were there, and Nilanjana, my friend, she said, "Oh, they know you've come from Scotland, and so people want to sing to you." This was a tears moment, and these people sang "Coming Through the Rai" in Bengali to me, and it was just magic. And then we sang it again, and I sang it obviously not in Bengali. And it was a tremendous power of music that I can't speak Bengali. A lot of them did speak English, but they had lost their English because they had dementia. But we were able to sing together. And that's what singing together can do. You can hum if you don't know the words. I always say that with the singing groups. If you don't know the words, just go la-di-da-di-da. You know, we can all do that. So people, very, very important then, that we sing with other people and we sing together. I just want to just put this in quickly. I'm going to get on to something else in a minute. It's not music therapy. There is a role for music therapists. Obviously, there's a role for music therapists with some people who have dementia. But what we do is not, it's therapeutic, but it's really important that I think that we don't describe it as therapy. Because once you start it as therapy, it becomes something other. The singing group I was just in just now, that wasn't therapy. It was therapeutic, it was great fun, but we mustn't medicalize it. There's a great temptation when people have dementia to medicalize all the things that they've got the same needs as the rest of us. It's something that you'll probably guess there's a backstory to this, which I'm not going to share with you. But anyway, so I feel quite strongly about that. Choirs. Many, many choirs have people in them who have dementia. They've been in the choir for years and years and years, and they've developed dementia, and they're still singing in the choir. And eventually, I've been in those choirs, they will leave. I'm not saying choirs are a bad thing. I know yours is called a choir, but I know it's not a choir, is it? It's not a choir. There has been quite a push to have choirs. There's been money to form choirs so people with dementia can join choirs that perform. Now, if you go back to that very early slide I showed you, which is the worst thing you can do for someone with dementia is stress them. And I don't know how many of you have ever sung in a choir, but even if you haven't got dementia, it can be quite stressful. And there's no way somebody with dementia, past the early stages, obviously, is going to remember, that sing F sharp in bar 4, or come in after whatever. So we have to be really, really careful. I'm not saying don't have choirs. What I am saying is be very cautious. What we should be doing is what I know you're doing, and what we've been doing, is having sing-alongs. No pressure to perform. Some of the people who come to our singing groups do call it the choir. Well, that's fine. But actually, if you have a choir, what point are you going to say to that person, you're going to have to leave? Like, given dementia is a series of awful losses, are you really then going to say, hang on, you're not good enough anymore? Do you know? Don't start it. Get them to come to a sing-along where they stay. Certainly in the choirs we've had people come until 2 days before they have died, right at the end. People can still sing. Right. Some reasons for the group. Well, there's the whole thing about social activity, but one of the big things about music, going back to the beginning, as I was saying to you, music gets into our bodies. Our bodies resonate. So the person with dementia will actually, you'll have seen that, people who can't necessarily speak or can't articulate things will respond to music. One of the issues for people with dementia is they get very little activity. So what we often do is focus on the dementia without focusing on the body. As we get older, we need to keep active. People with dementia tend to sit much, much more often than people without dementia. As often, and they're often trapped at home. They don't get out very much. Neither do their carers, of course. Carers will feel often that they can't go out as often. So people with dementia, when we're using music, we're doing, say, a singing group, try and build in activities for the person that's there. That might be the only time they get an activity. However, there's a problem. If you want people to clap or whatever, or wave their arms, when the baby's born, its brain is pretty blank, and the baby doesn't know, that means the brain doesn't know, where the baby ends and its mother begins, where the world begins. It has to learn that. So you know how babies, they'll wiggle their fingers and go, oh, and they scratch themselves, and we put those mittens on to stop them. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me as well. And then they'll pick up, this is obviously a skill you lose, they pick up their toes and put them in their mouth. And of course, when you put your toe in your mouth, oh, that's me as well. So the brain, but when babies are doing it, the brain is learning with the baby's body. It has, if you like, the brain, there's this area of the brain that has what we call the geography of our body, and that gets damaged with the dementia. It's one of the other things that gets damaged. And that means that actually it's very hard for people with dementia. It's one of the reasons they have difficulty someone's dressing, whatever, because you can't wake up. But also if we're doing music, they can't always do that because they can't work it out, or they might not be able to do that, or some of the gestures we want them to do, or if we want people to dance, which we should, it would lovely get people to dance. So we have to, if we're using the music, we have to try and think how we can support people, not to just sit there and sing, which is great, but also to get up and respond, because when we respond physically to the music, it gets into us even more. But so you need to think about, I have to say, one of the, of course, if you go back in those diaries, I'll tell you one of the things that always works is the okie kokie. So sitting down, but everybody knows the okie kokie, and it's a really good exercise. Even if they're putting the wrong arm in, do you know, or they put their leg in when they put their arm in. But it's brilliant, and always after we've done it, everybody is full of energy. Right, I've got 5 minutes, full of energy. So yes, so think about that. Again, it's about thinking, always thinking what's going on in the brain, what can the person do, what can't they do. Right. Oh, the other, I'm not giving you the stories. One of the things that is very important is that it's fun, of course. Very often I've had people say to me, I don't see any point in it because she's forgotten that, as soon as we get home, she's forgotten that she's been. Of course, just because you forget, because your brain doesn't tell you, that doesn't mean you don't feel it. So people will still feel good after they've been singing. They won't remember why, but they will feel good. And if you feel good, you're more likely to be able to talk and whatever. Just a story, only one story, and you'll all have stories. So a lady who came with her husband to one of our groups, and she hadn't spoken for 5 months, and she had that sort of, dead, the sort of mask, no expression. And he said, somebody said we should bring her here, and but I don't see any point because, and anyway, we said, well, just sit down. So she sat down, and she, the sort of, the sideways, whatever, and started singing, and she started just to tap, just could see her tapping, to the rhythm, then and then she started to vocalize, la, 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 la. By the end, she was singing all the songs. The next morning, she woke up and she turned to her husband and said, I think we should bake a cake. And they did. Now, I'm not saying that happens all the time. I'm not saying music is always that dramatic, but I'm sure those of you who are working with people, singing with people, could add to that. We could probably write 100 stories like that. It opens people up. The music, it opens up, it relaxes the brain, and it allows things in. Right, I'm going to... but sometimes it's quite good. I've had this happen more than once, going into a home and have someone come up to me and sing, show me the way to go home. And you go, yeah, that's what you want to do. Can't say it, but you can sing it. And often we would use songs, and I think I haven't got time now because I've got 4 minutes now, using songs that connect people. So using songs from the past. I have to say that one of the, sorry guys, well, you maybe would do it. One of the men, not the women, very often request, so I shouldn't laugh, it's just if you've ever heard it, Frank Sinatra, My Way. Well, I don't know if you've tried as a group, without any drink, singing My Way, and it just goes, My Way. So sometimes you have to, we do sing these songs, but sometimes you have to take some control over what everybody's going to enjoy. I'm not going to tell you these stories because I've run out of time. It provides a diversion. People with dementia are anxious and depressed or whatever. They can be very depressed and agitated. If you sing for a while, you all know this, you something else, and they alleviates pain. I'm going to stop because I'm running out of time. I'm just going to stop, I think, with, right. I'm just going to quickly do this. How long have I got? 2 minutes now. Yeah, there you go. Those of you who run the group already, we would have a variety of formats. We did some of this just this afternoon. We would always start off with we always start off with the same song. We always end with the same song. We would start off singing in unison, and then we would do rounds, and then we would do partner songs, and then we would get up and dance. And I have to say, and those of you who run the group, you maybe have the same one, the bestest song to dance to, the one that wherever I've been, anywhere almost in the world, is I Could Have Danced All Night from My Fair Lady. And it is brilliant. And we usually have to play it 3 or 4 times. And I have on occasion going, we're going to do something else this week. And do you know, I've been shouted at. Like, what? No? And they go, well, we do it every week. And it's the bestest, honestly. I could have danced all night because everybody gets the chance, that at the end to stop. And then you go on. Brilliant. But you'll all find it. But it is a matter of trial and error. And it will vary depending on where you are and what people's history is. I'm going to have to stop there because I've run. Oh, Beautiful Sunday. Oh, that's a lovely one as well. Anyway, you're not going to sing. I'd got that in case I had an opportunity to put it in, but you're not going to. Right, so that's my 40 minutes up. Right, thank you.
Very, very much. Right, okay, so time for questions. Before I look at Slido, because I know some on there, anything from the audience?
I wish I heard it a year ago.
Who excited to see who? Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hello, my brother-in-law, who has dementia, has, as far as I know, no musical background. He never sang. His family, I think when they were small children, perhaps the parents sang to them. As far as I know, is that going to affect him?
The fact that he'd never sung.
My impression is he's never sung.
Yes.
Is that going to make life more difficult?
No, that's interesting. I've never been asked that question before. If you've never, that's very unusual. Never to. So was it something forbidden for religion? Was it a religious thing, or they just didn't sing? Most people. It's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody. I think it was with Susan yesterday. There's a lot of things in our heads that we would love to do, but we don't do them. So I bet at least 2/3 of you in this room were told at school, don't bother joining the choir, you can't sing, right? And I had that all the time. And you can sing. And so often people just need permission to sing. And in fact, my clarinet teacher used to say when he would go to schools or whatever, and they would say, oh, they can't sing. And he would go, sing a note. And they would sing a note, and he'd go, right, that was A then. Right, sing another note. That was C then. So you can sing. And I think there's a lot of that. And I think so somebody who hasn't sung, maybe it would certainly be worth having a go. But also, if the person has dementia, one of the things we would do, and I've had people come who just won't sing, like that's rigid, don't know why I'm here, whatever, and sitting, looking at the person, the thing I meant to say, smile. If you don't smile, you're wasting your time. Smile all the time. If you're there and you sing, and often just put your hand, just encourage them and sing really loudly and smile. They will often come and sing. I go and have a go and let me know. But certainly, all of us hear a tune. There's only people with very particular brain condition do not hear music and do not respond to music. So that person will have music in their head. It's been in there since they were born. So it's just a matter of coaxing it out. Yeah. There. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So when you talk about
Can I just, while I'm waiting for that, can I just reiterate the need to smile? I am going to do the question.
Is that me?
Oh, yeah. God, you're loud. People with dementia. So I do want to hear your question, but I just suddenly realised I missed it out. All of us, when we're communicating with somebody, listen to verbal things, but we also pick massively non-verbal cues. We're looking for other things that are going on. Now, if you're cognitively impaired, if you can't pick up the words, if it takes ages to process what the word was and then find the word to come back, what you will do is look at the person. So you'll be looking for these other indicators about what's going on. So if you smile, then the message is everything's all right. It's okay. This is very difficult, and carers have told me this. If you're stressed, if I show any of you a face that's stressed, you will think the person's angry. And that's why very often people with dementia are saying, what have I done wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Because the message they picked up non-verbally, I'm just going to go to the toilet, I'll be down in a minute, What have I done wrong? Whereas, I know it's easy for me to stand up here and say it, but smiling is giving off this other message. Yes, sorry, that was just by the by. Right.
Just going to say that your depiction of the diaries falling over and losing them, so does that then support the benefit of sort of intergenerational singing, where you've got older people, potentially with dementia, and children?
Yep.
The benefit there.
Because if I actually think, thank you. One of the issues is if I have dementia, and this is an issue that we have had, it's what am I doing with all these old people? Because actually I'm quite young. So yes, but apart from that, singing with the children is always a joy. I don't think people with dementia will respond to children, and the children respond to them. Children don't have that fear that the rest of us tend to have about people with dementia. They'll say anything, do you know? So yes, it would be really good to do that. Yeah. We often don't take enough risks. We have to be very careful. I'm not saying, open the doors and let people walk in the street, but we can become, understandably, especially if you're a carer, very, very anxious about the person with dementia. But I think often as service providers, we need to be a bit more bold. And the story I tell, which I just tell very quickly, is the place I used to work in. I don't know if you've been to the Lofoten Islands. They're lovely up in the north of Norway. And the place I went in, this is a very good example. I went in, you could go in the front door like this, and if you went that way, it was the maternity unit. And if you went that way, it was for people with dementia. And the babies would be born, and they would bring the babies down, and the people who had dementia. Now, we would probably do a risk assessment, so somebody would go off with the baby, do you know, and you won't be allowed to do it. But actually, it was brilliant. And the women in this group, many of them had dolls, because it triggered that. And a lot of them, Norwegian women, knit. They couldn't necessarily knit, but they had their balls. So yes, I think the thing about the children and taking some sort of risks as well, whereas children, they're just not, they just get on with it. Yeah.
And if I can just take a moment just to jump off the back of that question, because we have a question in Slido similar to that, which is, I'm guessing from someone who's asking or maybe thinking about doing a group work or things like that. We're talking about playlists, and often when we think about doing things like this, we think on a one-to-one level.
Yes.
How would you scale that up? So let's say we've got 20 people in our group. What support or advice would you give for someone who's got to think about 20 different playlists for 20 different people on a whole wide range of age ranges?
Yep.
I've seen it. The playlist has to be particular and peculiar to that person. So you need to talk to their relatives. You need to talk to their daughter. You need to talk to whoever it was knew what sort of music they liked, or their husband. And of course, a lot of them, often we talk to people's children, but the children didn't know their mum till they were probably in their 30s. So they can't say what their mum really liked then. So we need to try stuff. So doing the playlist, I'd often play things and see how people respond. But yes, it would have to be each person with their own playlist. And I have to say that I've only seen this happen twice, where I've seen everybody plugged into their playlist and left, right? Just in a circle, looking at each other. Well, that's not right, obviously. But what we need to do is, it has to be done individually. I don't know who asked the question, but it's a really personal thing, and it's very time consuming. It's not something just to go, well, mum used to like, or dad used to like Frank Sinatra, you know. It's got to be very, very peculiar to that person. So it does take a long time, actually. And a lot of people actually still have their old vinyl, and that's worth going and getting out. And certainly a lady, her daughter that I've been working with recently, I mean, actually, I have to say, a daughter and I have had a ball, because we found all this old vinyl. High Society, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, do you know, is one that she clearly used to play a lot. We didn't know that, and we put it on, and as soon as we put it on, she was, going on. So yeah, it takes, if you're going to do it properly, it takes a long time. It's not just a matter of saying, oh, she likes Mozart, or she likes the Eagles, or whatever. I don't know, I don't ask the question, but it is hard to do. And if you're running a home, that is very, very time consuming. And you need to work with relatives to try and get, if you can, to get there. And actually, sorry, I'm going on. One of the experiences many relatives have when they have somebody in a home is they don't know what to do when they go in. They don't know what to talk about. They don't know how to communicate. So one of the wonderful things that you can do is actually say, why could you help us get a playlist? So when you come in, could you bring some discs with you, or if you've got them or whatever, and can you help us with your mum or your dad to get the playlist together? Also, if you run a group, relatives can come. They might find it really difficult to talk to their mother, but they can sit beside them and sing. And I've had people say to me, oh God, this has just been so good. And the people who haven't been able to come in very often because they felt stressed will now come in at every singing group because they've got a role. They've got something they can do.
Yeah. And just to pick up on the point you say there about watching people's reactions, is this what you had meant? There was a point you mentioned in the talk about the calmness measures.
Yes.
I mean, I've shared with you my journey. I had my grandmother, and you know, I agree with what you were saying over there. I wish I had heard this talk a long time ago as well. Someone come from a non-medical background, what are the sort of calmness markers that we can use to see if what we are doing is working and it's actually helping to calm that person?
Well, first of all, change in people's breathing is obviously one of the things. You can see on their face, you can see the face just relax. If you try and take their hand and somebody's calm, they'll often let you take their hand. But if they're stressed, they won't. What are you doing? You know? So it would be things like that. Oh. Right. Touching people is, people with dementia feel lonely and lost and whatever. So one of the calmness things you can do is to touch the person. And of course it has to be appropriate. And you have to know the person. And I was thinking about your person who's never sung. You know, there'll be people who don't like being touched. We need to know that. But yes, some of the markers would be if you touch the person and they lean into you. In fact, that is lovely. Somebody who's been stressed, if you put the music on and you just touch them and they lean into you, you think, oh God, that's it, yes. But yes, a lot of it, anybody, I don't know if there's any doctors here, but one of the things I know that I was told is as soon as somebody walks into surgery, you look at their eyes and they look at their pallor, because that's what you're looking for. That's telling you something. So watching the person, you look at someone's eyes. And you can tell whether they're stressed or not. Yeah.
Thank you. Time for just a couple more questions. We'll take one from Slido, one from the room. We'll take the one in the room first.
I know this isn't music, but it reminded us, I forgot, I did it for 3 years, I should remember. From 2010 to 2013, there was a project with WRVS in Murray that I did.
Yeah.
For Murray Memories, I created a website for it. And what we did was we interviewed people who are retirement age about their first jobs. So if you're ever in a bus queue or you're ever sitting on a train, and I always say it because I'm a teacher, and when I talk to teenagers particularly as well, saying, just ask them, what was your first job?
Yes.
But be aware they might not want to do that first job, there might be a story around that, but that's a really good way in.
Brilliant.
Well. Yeah, absolutely. That's a way in. Your first job, actually, your first day at school, people will always tell you, that might not be happy, of course, but yes, your first job, yeah. The other, just picking up on that, which is really important, is that you need to, which I didn't say either, because I was going to, is remember people are having difficulty processing the words. So we need to, when we ask that question, that's a very short answer to that question. When we're doing music with people living with dementia, when we introduce something, I certainly have to resist the temptation I have, which is to tell stories. There's a part of our brain which we use for patterning. I'm using it at the moment for speech, to pattern my sentences, and that gets damaged. So people with dementia can only can cope with fewer and fewer patterns, fewer and fewer changes. So giving a long explanation about a song, say, that you're about to, they can't follow that. It's too long. There's too many patterns in it. And I do have a rule which I don't necessarily manage to stick to, which is never use more than 5 sentences in cueing in a song. Because it's too much for many people. They forgot, by the time I've got to this side, they've forgotten what I'm doing there. They're still trying to work out when I said, this is Doris Day, or whatever, and then I'm talking about something else. So, yes, very important that the simple question, straightforward question, but also when we're doing singing is to try and keep our instructions as straightforward. I could go into a whole lot of stuff here, but as straightforward as possible, and never use euphemisms or whatever, because they don't work. And in fact, raining cats and dogs, where's the dog? That sort of thing. To say what you mean and make it concrete, and that would be a very good example of that. Yeah.
I am conscious of the time. Just one last question, and then we'll do a very quick wrap up. I know that there are probably going to be more questions in the audience, but we can move into the foyer after this session, and we're not going to have to worry about taking up the space for the next event, because I'm sure you've all seen the itinerary. We've got a lot of programs on. So, last question is it's actually someone that's thinking on the same lines as me. Should we be making our own playlist about now?
Yeah.
That's quick answer.
Yeah, you should. There's two things we should be doing: is making a playlist and doing our life story work. Because one of the critical things about working with people with dementia is exactly what you're saying. We don't know their life story, so when they go back in their diaries, we don't know. And I have to say that can be very interesting. People. This is my final story. A man who was in a care home near me, and the staff said he couldn't stay any longer because he had dismantled all the light bulbs, he dismantled anything mechanical. When they went into his bedroom, and he would crouch. Anyway, it turned out, his family said, it's funny, they said, we don't know what he's talking. And it turned out he was talking Russian and Serbo-Croat. And his family always thought he was a travelling salesman. He was clearly a spy, and what he was doing was dismantling the light bulbs and things, and looking for things. So, that isn't. But most people have had an interesting history, and it's also very complicated. And so, write down the things you'd like people to know, because that will help them understand you when you go back in your diaries. Sorry, I'll stop there.
Sorry, that story is just fascinating me there. There's a lot of things you can unpick. Right, okay, well, as I said, we're just going to have to wrap up the session for now. You'll notice dashed around, sorry, yes.
Can I have to say it?
Okay, yes, sure.
A little bit of interest, I think, locally here in considering music and playlists and things. So, for anybody who needs any help with that, I'm sure Age Scotland, Orkney and Victoria Street would be very happy to help anybody make up a playlist or to guide them on that issue.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, that's all from me. I'd like for you to join me again once more in a warm appreciation for Diana Kerr today. Thank you.